Before I start this episode, I just want to say thank you to our friends at Game.Press and the folks over at 11-Bit Studios and Digital Sun for providing us with a review copy of Moonlighter 2, The Endless Vault.
Extra content, baby.
Welcome back to another Podmas episode. Today, it's just me, Alex, here with the DLC episode. I know. Truly a Christmas miracle. Now, when I think of Christmas, I think of Santa, good old Saint Nick. I think of his iconic white hair and how he brings joy to those around him through questionably priced junk found lying around in dungeons. He's really not that much different than the main character of today's game, Moonlighter 2, The Endless Vault. Developed by Digital Sun and published by 11-Bit Studios, it released on the 19th of November 2025 and is available on current generation PlayStation and Xbox, as well as Steam and GeForce Now. It is an action RPG with roguelike and shop-sim elements. For me personally, that's a winning combination. Now, as you might expect, this is a sequel to the 2018 game Moonlighter. Before I go on to talk about Moonlighter 2, I think it's important to quickly talk about the original and how Moonlighter 2 has improved on the format. Now, up until recently, I'd never played Moonlighter. I'd seen it plenty of times, and more than once found myself wanting to play it only to get sidetracked by other games or just life in general. But when I was offered a key to Moonlighter 2, I thought it was important to go back and see where it all began, and so I did. Just to touch on the story, some years ago, several mysterious doors were found to lead to unique dungeons filled with artifacts. This attracted many people to the area, and so the village of Rinoka, where Moonlighter 1 takes place, was founded. It's explained that there are only two types of people who explore these dungeons: heroes who want to explore and kill the monsters for fame and glory, and merchants who want to explore and search for artifacts to sell. We play as Will, a 17-year-old orphan who falls into the latter category but wishes to be a hero. He explores these dungeons, searching for artifacts to sell at his family shop, the Moonlighter, located in the heart of Rinoka. There is more to the story, however, I don't want to spoil that for you. There are two aspects to this game, two gameplay loops if you like: dungeon exploring and shop management. We'll look at the dungeon exploring aspect first. This is the Action-RPG Roguelike part of the game. You get to choose one of four weapons: a sword and shield, a greatsword, a spear, or a pair of gauntlets. Each weapon has their own combat style, and it entirely depends on how you want to play the game. Then you enter the dungeon and explore, find treasure, fight monsters, and progress until a boss room where you'll fight what's known as a guardian. Defeating this guardian gets you a key to the next dungeon. This loop repeats a few times, though with increasing difficulty. The dungeons themselves are fairly simplistic. They're all the same size rectangle, with varying levels of obstacles, enemies, and treasure. Once you enter the room, the doors are locked, and they won't open again until you defeat all the enemies within. Not too dissimilar to what you might find in older Legend of Zelda type games. You have limited bag space, and if you die in the dungeon, you lose all the artifacts you've collected. You can escape at any time with your artifacts, however it will cost you some gold. This is where we move on to the shop simulation aspect of the game. You take your artifacts back to your store, the Moonlighter, to sell them. The trick here is to see how NPCs are reacting to your pricing. There are four different levels of reaction: drastically overpriced, somewhat expensive, perfectly priced, and absolute bargains. There's a real balancing act to play here where you don't want to overprice your artifacts to the point that no one buys them, but you also don't want it so cheap that you're making next to nothing. Gold is really important in this game. As mentioned before, you do need it to escape dungeons early if you want to, but you can also use it to invest in the town, bringing new types of merchants in who can sell you things like potions, enchantments, and armour, all with the aim of improving your dungeon runs, helping you get to the end quicker, easier, and with a greater chance of success. Graphically speaking, Moonlighter 1 is a 2D isometric pixel art style game. I would probably say it sits somewhere in the realms of Pokemon Diamond and older Legend of Zelda games, but with more pixels. The art is really well made. There's been some really nice attention to detail. However, it does look a little bit dated, especially for a 2018 game. But now let's move on and talk about Moonlighter 2 The Endless Vault. In Moonlighter 2 we play as a slightly more grown up Will. Rinoka has been destroyed and Will, alongside the other displaced Rinokans, find themselves stranded in the distant village of Tresna. You find out there are similar vaults here, so you open a shop and repeat the cycle of dungeon delving for artifacts, selling them, and reinvesting in your friends' establishments, thus having access to better weapons, potions, enchantments, and so on, all improving your chances of surviving your runs through the dungeon. It's a very familiar gameplay loop. It's still the same weapon choices from Moonlighter 1, sword and shield, greatsword, spear, and gauntlets. It's also a lot of the same enchantments and potions you would expect to find in this type of game. Health potions, reduced damage enchantments, attack speed enchantments, and the likes. The difference with Moonlighter 2 compared to the original is that to get these improvements you actually have to delve through the dungeons and find recipes and unique parts required to build them. It's not just a case of earning enough money to be able to pay them off. Now, before I go too much more into the mechanics of this, I have to say that this game has had a huge graphic overhaul. It's clear that a lot of attention and care has gone into making this game look good. As I mentioned earlier, the original was a very much 2D isometric pixel art style, akin to the older Pokemon and Zelda games. Moonlighter 2, I would say, is closer to something like Bastion or Hades. It's a very stylized, cartoony, lower poly cartoon kind of style. There's also been a lot more work put into the special effects and the user interface of this game, and it's all around just much nicer to look at than the original. Back to the gameplay loops. Moonlighter 2 has taken what the original did and massively improved on them. With the dungeons, you are still entering a room, killing a wave of enemies, collecting loot and moving on. But the dungeon rooms are much more interesting. First off, it's that 3D isometric style. Levels have multiple elevations, wildly varied layouts and shapes, enemies and obstacles are much more dynamic, movement is a lot more fluid, and you have a lot more options in combat. It's also worth mentioning at this point that all the dungeons are procedurally generated, so every time you go for a run, you're going to have a different experience. A lot of attention has clearly gone into the themes of each of these dungeons. So much so that all the environmental assets, the clutter, the enemies, they all feel like they belong in that area. Take the first dungeon for example. Kalina is a sort of deserty mesa wasteland kind of look to it. It's a lot of wood bridges and burning rocks, dust clouds and tumbleweeds. And the enemies are all sort of very bug, scorpion looking. They feel like they belong in that environment. Whereas the next level you move on to, the gallery, is a more futuristic sci-fi kind of art exhibition zone. So a lot of the enemies are sort of security droids and drones that can shock you, that type of thing. Again, they feel like they belong there. How you progress through these dungeons has definitely taken some inspiration from games like Cult of the Lamb. When you enter a dungeon, you are presented with a map that has various types of rooms and branching paths that you can go through. There are a multitude of room types, from treasure rooms, rooms with elite enemies that offer higher rewards, power-up rooms, quest rooms, mystery rooms, and so on. It really gives you the option to take the dungeon run however you want. Maybe you want to progress through more treasure rooms to escape early and sell everything, make a bit of quick gold. Or maybe you want to hit as many power-ups as possible and complete the dungeon, defeating the boss at the end. The game really gives you that freedom to choose. With the power-ups, it's a similar system to what you would find in something like Hades. The map will tell you what kind of power-up room you're going into. So it might be foam, which affects your gun damage. It could be a room that affects your base damage on your weapon. Could be rooms that give you elemental buffs like fire or thunder damage. Once you defeat the wave of enemies in that room, you approach the pedestal, where you are presented with 3 options. This can be everything from your standard attacks hit twice, your special attacks now do area damage, your gun causes knockback, weapons deal additional burn damage, Attacking generates electricity charges on you, which when they get to a certain level will explode, damaging all enemies around it. There are a lot of options which really adds to the replayability of it, and you will find yourself seeking out the type of bonuses that appeal to your particular playstyle. The relics also work very differently in this game. Yes, you still have your limited backpack space, starting with 8 slots, but now the relics will cause different effects depending on where you put them in your backpack and depending on the actual relic. You'll find some that will have an arrow pointing to the left and it will say that it'll burn the relic to the left. You may also find other relics that, while in the corner of your backpack, will cast armour on other relics based on relics getting burnt, or increase the quality of everything in the row. It's not just a case of grabbing the relic and sticking it in your backpack. You have to think about where you're putting it. And as you progress further and you've only got so many slots, you'll find yourself really thinking about which relics you want to take and how they're going to affect each other. Moving on to the shopkeeping mechanics, this has also had quite an overhaul. Relics that you find in the dungeons will now have a quality level. This quality level will affect the amount of money you can make from selling that relic. You can decorate your sales floor area to improve sale prices of certain types of relics, be that different rarities, relics from different locations, or even just a blanket general improvement. As you go through your day of selling, you can also gain temporary buffs to improve things like the amount of gold you gain from sales, or increase the interest in relics from certain locations. At time of recording, I've only got 7 hours in this game, so I'm not too far through the story. I'm sure that there's a lot more coming and I'm excited to play it. But it's time for the big question. Is Moonlighter 2 The Endless Vault worth it? Absolutely. What Digital Sun have done is take the core aspects of their original game, combined that with inspiration from other games in the genre, and made something that feels like a true sequel. There is a lot more I could say about this game, but I would really encourage you to go and try it for yourself. It's a great pick up and play game, it runs beautifully on the Steam Deck, and it'll definitely have you saying, oh, go on then. One more dungeon run can't hurt. So once again, a big thank you to Game.Press, Digital Sun and 11-Bit Studio for the review copy. I've been Alex, this has been DLC, and we'll see you again tomorrow for another Podmas episode.